Hey guys, welcome back to the Queen X Queer podcast. Today we have a bonus episode, so it's just going to be me, and I am going to be doing a little advice segment. I might start doing this weekly, every 2 weeks. Who knows? Let's see how it works out. Um, on today's advice segment, I want to talk about something that is quite close to my heart. I'd say that personally, it's a real character flaw of mine, probably the main one that needs working on, and that is jealousy. If you look at jealousy, psychology today describes it as low self esteem, high neuroticism, and feelings of possessiveness against others, particularly romantic partners. Whether we like to admit it or not, we've all experienced jealousy before, whether it be because of social media and its unrealistic standards when it comes to women and how they should look, whether it's in friendships, maybe you're jealous that your friend got a new car and you're not quite there yet. It could be in dating. It could be towards a partner's friendship of another female or person, and how the situation has made you feel personally. You know, jealousy doesn't necessarily make us bad people, but it can make us do bad things. And how we handle it is a reflection of ourselves. I personally have not handled jealousy well in my life. I'm now in therapy trying to do the best that I can to combat this. But I wanted to talk about some ways in which I've dealt with jealousy and how they've sort of arrived in my life. I've had a lot of different experiences. The first one that really comes to mind was in my old job. I felt really jealous of my coworker, and she was my friend as well. So it left me feeling a lot of guilt towards her. Even though I hadn't spoken to her about my jealousy issues, I still felt guilty that I felt a type of way about how well she was doing, considering that we were in the same job role. Um, so yeah, I felt bad for feeling jealous, like I said, because she was my friend. The reason I felt jealous was because she seemed to be excelling a lot quicker than I was in the same job role. She was constantly getting employee of the month. She was constantly getting praised. My managers were constantly speaking about how great she was. You know, like the other professional she was working with explained to everyone how she was so good to work with, so easy. She was so quick at the job. Um, all of these qualities that at the time I couldn't see in myself, and I felt like were I wasn't good enough at this particular job. Um, I think a lot of it actually stems towards the fact that I have ADHD, and it does take me a little longer to learn things and to pick up new skills. I didn't quite realize this until I came into a job that was specifically heavy on remembering how to do certain procedures and, basically becoming on autopilot to get these things done. And for me, that was really, really difficult. But there were a lot of things that I could have done to help myself that I didn't at the time. I wasn't willing to explain to my manager that I needed the extra time to learn things due to my ADHD. There were a lot of tools there that could have helped me, but instead of helping myself, I wanted to act like it wasn't my fault and that it was because my friend was getting favoritized, but that wasn't actually the case at all. That never happened. I wasn't willing to accept that I needed help because of my ADHD, and I felt embarrassed because of that. I felt stupid. I felt like I wasn't progressing as quickly as the other girls that were trainees at my job were, and that this is because I wasn't receiving the extra help. But you can't receive extra help if you're not asking for it. You can't receive extra help if you're not pinpointing the problem, which is what my work tried to do and help me with so many times. But I was so frustrated that all I thought was that I wasn't getting a fair chance against everybody else. Not that there were tools there that could have helped me, you know, carry on my work in a positive way and to where I could have probably caught up to everyone else. I just saw it as this is unfair. There's things that have happened to me here that no one else has had to deal with yet, and I just got the short straw with who I was working with and all of these other reasons that realistically weren't true. And even though I know that I could have done things to help myself, I now have reflected and looked back and realized that actually there were things that my work probably could have done to change things as well. I was working with one particular coworker, and he was very aggressive towards me. He was very quick to put me down. He'd been in the business a long time, and I think that honestly, he showed a lot of traits of narcissism. Uh, he would make me feel awful. I'd come home crying most days, and when I did approach management about this, they kind of made me feel a little bit like my feelings didn't really matter in the situation, or like I was making a drama out of something that wasn't really there. I remember going into the office and crying because I'd just been screamed at in front of a patient at the time. And I remember being told by my manager, "You weren't screamed at, you were shouted at." In my head, I was kind of like, same difference, like what is going on here? This isn't fair at all. So yeah, there were red flags that definitely didn't help towards the jealousy aspect of how things were going, because there definitely were unfair situations that I went through that other people didn't have to, but also at the same time there were tools there available to help me overcome the jealousy that I was feeling towards this particular coworker slash friend that I didn't really do anything about. Sometimes it's not completely your fault, but sometimes if you're the only person willing to change, that at least is gonna get you ahead of the game, if you know what I mean. Um, there are a lot of topics that I have actually been topics. There are a lot of reasons that I felt jealous in my life, which is why I've written a lot down. Another instance that comes to mind is friendship. Um, I have a friend whose life looks absolutely perfect on paper. Like, it was only until we got closer that I started realizing, okay, she has her own issues going on. And when you're jealous, that's something you really don't think about. You don't think about the fact that this person, you know, what they put on social media and what they put out to the world isn't necessarily what's really always going on at home. And that was something that I didn't realize at the time. So the issue with my friend really, I remember, was feeling, and this is really hard for me to admit because it's always been something that I've been very insecure about, is comparison of her body to mine. I've always had hip dip. I'm pretty sure that most of you girls are going to know what that is. If you don't, it's where you have quite wide hips, and then going onto your thighs, you have that sort of dip in between your leg and your hip. Um, because of this, I always felt very insecure about ever wearing a bikini or going to the beach or getting undressed in front of female friends or partners or anything like that. It made me very insecure for a long time. Honestly, I don't think that people are looking round and going, she has hip dip. God, she has hip dip. That's disgusting. But in my mind, that is how everyone saw me. So when I saw this friend who genetically just had a great body, all the women in her family have great bodies, like perfect bums, like small little waists, no hip dip. I felt so jealous. And in my head, I was like, this is so unfair. Why am I working so hard to have my body a certain way? And it's not changing, even when I was at my leanest. But she gets to just walk around after, she's not a workout girly. Fair enough. Neither am I really at the minute, but at the time I wasn't. I was like, this is so unfair. Why does she get to look this way when I'm working so hard towards this goal that she has just obtained naturally? And I couldn't figure out why she got, better luck genetically than I had. But realistically, I didn't know that she was actually dealing with her own body dysmorphia at the time. She was actually not very confident in her own body, and I didn't know that. All that I saw was, "Wow, she looks great next to me. I don't wanna stand next to her in a bikini." But actually, she'd been going through a lot with her own body that I didn't realize. And also, it's not her fault that she genetically and naturally just has these things that I don't. And there's nothing wrong with my body anyway. Hip dip is completely natural. It's something that most women do have. It's something that society has made us feel awful for having, that we shouldn't feel awful about. We can't help how we are naturally. And that's all I really have to say about that. I mean, if I would have actually researched it myself at the time, I would have realized that this is something most women have, that it's natural and there's a reason that we have it there. But I wasn't doing that. I was just comparing myself instead of looking into the reason to why my body was this way. I think that when I look back, the reason that I felt this way is because when I was younger, I had an ex-boyfriend ask me why my body was so strange, and I didn't understand what he meant, and he said, "Well, like, you've got this, like, gap. It kind of, like, snakes round on your body." And after that, I was like, "Oh my god, what is wrong with me?" I remember another time, in high school, a guy said to me that I had a really weird body. Um, yeah, not the nicest thing to say, but you know how young kids are. Looking back, there were obviously a lot of things that I could have done, as previously said, to help myself. And realizing that there is an unrealistic beauty standard for women in the world is the first way to accept that you are absolutely fine the way you are, and there is nothing wrong with having hip dip. And yeah, I feel like I've covered this topic of friendship and body dysmorphia. So I'm going to move on to the next topic of jealousy that I've dealt with: relationship jealousy. This, for me, is probably my worst kind of way that jealousy has transpired into my personal life. This is hard for me to admit. For most girls, this is hard to admit, you know, the sort of hating the ex mentality when you know nothing about them really, or they've actually done nothing wrong to you. I was in a relationship where I would compare myself all the time to my partner's ex-girlfriend because we had similar interests, and I would compare my similar interests to how good she was and how many followers she had and all these things, and I was like, "She's so cool," and I'm not. Like, she seems so laid back, and I'm going through this period of feeling like I am just this jealous, like, sort of angry ex-girlfriend who has angry ex-girlfriend, girlfriend who just had nothing going for me at the time. Um, you know, I had to really look into why I had these feelings, and again, it was down to previous experiences that I'd had. Um, I was a big fat rebound with one guy that I was dating, and it was so obvious, and even my friends knew at the time. He got out of a really long relationship, and then we started a relationship, and I should have known, like, on the first date, all he would do was talk about his ex-girlfriend. I told my friends and they were like, "Yeah, red flag, you need to get out of there and run for the hills," but I didn't. I did end up staying, and he did eventually admit that he was still in love with his ex, which realistically the signs were all there, but I just didn't want to believe them. So instead, I tried turning myself into somebody that I'm not, to seem more like his ex-girlfriend. You know, like, I would wear floral dresses and be a little bit more girly and sort of deny excuse me, deny my sort of alternative side, which is who I probably am more of a person of. I, would buy these expensive shoes that I didn't even really like, that I thought personally weren't very nice. Um, I would act certain ways and try and imitate the way that I saw she was on social media, because in my head, if I could be like her, then he would like me more. But there are ways that I should have, you know, dealt with this and realistically just left that relationship. Um, I'm not responsible for someone else's actions. Just because he was still in love with his ex when we were together didn't mean that it made me any less beautiful or any less, of a good person because he still felt a certain type of way about her. Comparison is the thief of joy. We all know this. We all do it to ourselves anyway. I wasn't willing to see how beautiful I was because all that I could see was how he viewed her and how he didn't view me at the time. And it took me a long time after that relationship to realize that actually my experiences with ex-partners shouldn't affect the relationship I'm in now because my experiences don't define how worthy I am as a person or that I deserve more than feeling like I need to live up to somebody else's expectations or, a previous relationship that didn't work out for a reason. And I feel like this is a good way to kind of segue because I would look a lot into the girl's social media and then compare myself to her into my next topic, which is social media and influencers and how it can affect us and how we get jealous. Let me tell you something. I've met influencers in real life before, and they are people. They are people with bumps on their skin. They are people with eczema. They are natural people. You have to remember when you are looking at these influencers that it is their job. It is their job to be this way on social media. They do not look like this 24/7. Their photos are airbrushed, they're photoshopped, they're face tuned. We need to remember that this isn't a realistic standard. And I'm very much all for the you go girl mentality, like, you go get your bag. But we need to remember that these aren't real situations that are going on. These are photo shoots done by professional photographers with people who professionally work in editing to make them look like they are at their best. You wouldn't expect your doctor to be on his day off and still helping patients. You need to remember these things. These aren't real. These aren't goals that are realistic that you can set for yourself. The best goals that you can set for your body are when you prioritize your health over the way that you look. And that's something that I really struggled to come to terms with, but that I'm trying to really work on now. The last thing that I'd really like to talk about regarding jealousy and how it affects us is how we can change our jealous emotions and how we can create positivity from them. And I think the first step towards this is acknowledging the feeling and accepting it. Recognize that you are feeling jealous and think about what you can do to help it. And remember that it's a completely natural feeling. Everyone experiences jealousy at one point in their life or not, whether they want to admit it or not. Everyone gets jealous. The next thing that we need to think about is self reflection. Pinpoint what it is that's making you feel jealous and give yourself some clarity on why these things matter to you, right? Like whether it's how much money someone's got or whether it's someone's job position that you wish that you had, whether it is social media, your partner's ex-girlfriend, whatever it is, try and pinpoint the matter so that you can work on it and turn it into self-motivation, right? This is the key. Self-improvement is key in this situation. Give yourself positive and healthy goals. By that, I don't mean looking at what you're jealous of and thinking, I'm going to obtain the exact same thing because we are not carbon copies of each other. Think about how you can do it in a way that's going to help you and be completely healthy and tailored towards you because we're all different. You're never going to be able to achieve exactly what somebody else has. Never. It's impossible. And if you put those expectations on yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure. The next thing that I am guilty of really not doing is self gratitude and looking around at everything that I have already and how grateful I am for the things that I already have. You know, there is somebody that would be dying to be in your shoes that probably is jealous of you. You know, somebody who hasn't got a great home life, which you might have, somebody who's experiencing poverty. It's a vicious circle. It's a vicious cycle. Like I said, the best way to improve is to practice gratitude and be grateful for everything that you already have that somebody might not. And this leads us into growth and not comparison. Instead of comparison, focus on what you personally need to do for your individual self, like we just spoke about, and celebrate others. Tell the people you care about that you are proud of them, of their success, of the goals that they've reached. Tell them that you're happy for them. And eventually your mind will start to believe it. Jealousy can segue very easily into happy and positive emotions for other people if you realize that you are different and that everything isn't going to be exactly the same as the way that somebody else has it in your life. But you can still set these goals and be happy for yourself at the end because you realize that they are more realistic. That's all that I really have to say today on today's topic. I'm still figuring things out for myself and working on my own jealousy issues and insecurities. These are just some of the ways that I've experienced them and in that I think could be healthy tools towards somebody else's progression. But anyway, thank you so much for listening, guys. We will be back next week as usual. This is just some bonus content. Please like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you thought of today's episode. I'm a bit awkward when I'm by myself, in case you hadn't realized. Any feedback, positive, constructive, I'll take on board and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We love you all and have a great week. Bye.